executive directors, you get a loan. If you want to buy a helicopter, you can buy it. If you want to buy a fridge, a jet, you can buy it. But you do not get a free vehicle because of your position. Here in Zimbabwe, both in the public and the private sector, I think some of us have come to, now I hope I won't be unpopular, to have too many freebies. And I liked the discussion earlier on where I was saying, in actual fact, even this issue of salaries and all that, it's 15% we are talking about. And in some of our industries, maybe 60% of the burden of personnel goes to the executives. And we really need to address to the SOEs so that they approximate these very high salaries or so, which are in the private sector. And I think that we are living with it today. So I enjoyed quite a bit when there was this discussion about salaries, adjusting and what have you. Probably that train actually left the railway station a long time ago, but we need to find a solution. I was also quite happy to note we have guests from Turkey, isn't it? And we also need to broaden our horizons in terms of building relationships. And just a quick piece on Turkey. I think the two largest economies in Africa is Nigeria and South Africa. Their GDP combined, I think, is smaller than Turkey, or just about it. So that shows you the size of this economy. And they also have demonstrated certain skills in terms of delivery on a really large, complex infrastructure. Early this afternoon, that flies in the country or into the country. Because you see, these people, these international civil servants are highly paid. You don't want to be paying insurances on death and things like that. So you knew which airlines to allow your staff to travel on and which one not to. I don't know the state of Air Zim, but I wouldn't be surprised that working with municipal authorities that are focused, that are institutionally well organized. And finally, in Mpumalanga in Hwange, where we are also developing some housing estate. So, having said that, how many minutes were 5?
No, that was 5 minutes ago, but I'll give you another 2.
So, again, as I said, and the paper will be distributed, if we really want to have a robust, dynamic, and sustainable growth and development, we must address the issues of basic requirements in terms of, as a country, as an economy, what do we do about our institutions, about our infrastructure, about the macroeconomic environment, and health and education. And later on, we need, of course, at the same time, simultaneously, organically, we need to look at issues of market efficiencies, labor, financial development, etc., etc. I was going to touch on one interesting slide which deals with the requirements. As I said, we need to fund this infrastructure. A study by the African Development Bank says between 2009 and 2016, Zimbabwe should have been investing $2 billion every year in infrastructure. A parallel study by the World Bank said 1.6 billion. But what's important is it's over $1.5 billion every year since 2009. And what has been the reality in 2009 is 0. In 2010, 0.2 billion. That is the actual investment that we made. And in 2016, 0.5 billion. So we have a lot to catch up. And once the investment is there, we also need to do a lot of maintenance. And we have talked about our roads. We have talked about our airports, our bursting pipes. When you're driving in Avondale, in Harare, there's always a burst pipe somewhere. We also need to protect our investment. One of the painful experiences I have when I'm driving between Chegutu, Kwekwe, and Gweru is to see the vandalized network of electricity for the railways. We didn't protect our investment. And really we need to do more of that nature. My other colleagues are going to talk about why energy, which you know is important, why transport is important, not just to go to the ports, but also internally, to link points of production, whether it's agriculture or the mines, from one mine to the processing centers in Kwekwe and Gweru, etc. And really the national railways, we need to address that. There are figures which shows why railways is much cheaper than road, etc. And as a country, we need to address that. In terms of what all of us can do, and just to conclude, funding, planning, and funding infrastructure requires a long-term horizon. It's not something you just go and sign a memorandum and say you are ready to go. It requires time to prepare. And it doesn't always fit in the political, in the electoral time frame. But as government, we need to have the courage to say, let's do the right thing, prepare the projects properly, and also when the projects are ready for funding, let's have transparent procurement in order to get value for money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakala. Just some key points that I could take home. We have to make choices, and we have to deliver, and we have to focus. Have we been making the right choices, and have we been delivering, and have we been focusing? We have to choose partners that deliver. We have a lot of projects that we have started. Have those partners delivered? And added to that, we should have the courage to change course. Where we know those partners have not delivered, if we changed course, I think this is food for thought. We need to pay for services. I'm sure on this one, I don't need to say much more because we all know of what problems are when we don't pay for services. And then of importance to us as industry, partnerships. He gave some example of some of the partnerships and some of the projects that are undertaking. As industry, are we prepared to go into those partnerships, and what arrangements are we going to make to go into those partnerships? And the last one, we need to protect investments. It's not just enough to make a good infrastructural project. We have, after that, to guard it by protecting that investment. I think with those few remarks, then we now go to the interview. Us, I think she has been talking a lot on the power issues. And so what we wanted today to do is to just explain to us the current state of the power of energy. Where are we? What is, if industry is to operate at full capacity, will we have the current power? Will we have the power to be able to do that? And will we be able to cope with the increased demand? And then added to that, there is a lot of talk of green energy. What are we doing, and where are we with that? Engineer Magombo, I'll give you just testing. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Are we awake? This is the graveyard session, so I have to be talking to people who are awake. When you talk about energy, I guess it starts from where are we at the moment? Why energy? And I think the issues in terms of why energy has been, this has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying to people infrastructure is key to any economic development. And when you go just from infrastructure, and then you talk about energy, it becomes even more, I guess, critical. It starts from, if you look at our infrastructure at the moment, why energy? We have issues in terms of why energy. this has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying infrastructure is key to any economic development. And when you go just from infrastructure, and then when you talk about energy, it becomes even more, I guess, critical. Starts from, if you look at our infrastructure at the moment, why energy? We have issues why energy. This has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying infrastructure is key to any economic development. And when you go just from infrastructure, then when you talk about energy, it becomes even more, I guess, critical. Starts from, if you look at our infrastructure at the moment, why energy? We have issues why energy. This has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying infrastructure is key to any economic development. And when you go just from infrastructure, then when you talk about energy, it becomes even more, I guess, starts from, if you look at our infrastructure at the moment, why energy? We have issues why energy. This has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying infrastructure is key to any economic development. And when you go just from infrastructure, then when you talk about energy, it becomes even more, I guess, starts from, if you look at our infrastructure at the moment, why energy? We have issues why energy. This has been explained by the previous speaker who was saying infrastructure is key to any economic development. And power producers currently about 7 power stations which are operating with a capacity of about 28 megawatts. But we still have the old independent power producers which existed with a capacity of about 96 megawatts, which are the Tongaat, Ulet, the Triangle, Hippo Valley, and Green Fuel, which came in with an additional 18 megawatts. So we have the capacity. What is the demand? Where are we meeting the difference? Because I said we are producing only 75% of what we are consuming now. The difference is coming through imports. So it's important that we realize that currently as a country, we are not self-sufficient. We are importing from the region. The region 3 years ago had a serious deficit of up to 5,000 megawatts. And because of a successful renewable energy procurement program in South Africa and also new capacity which was brought in, we are currently sitting with an excess of about 900 megawatts. That's why we are able to now import and meet the requirements for the sector. And I'm sure all of you are aware that we have not had any load shedding for a long time. Right. So the question is it just for industry? No. If you look at us as a country, our access levels, as we sit right now, we're sitting at about 40% access to modern energy, especially electricity, which means we have 60% of our population which is not served. So whilst we are talking about industry being able to pick up, we also have part of the economy which also need infrastructure which needs to be built. And from that, if you look at the latest rural electrification plan, we are looking at about $3.2 billion in infrastructure to electrify the rural schools, households, and other outlets and productive activities which happen in the rural areas. So we are looking at about $180 million per year, which is required in form of infrastructure investments into the economy. And I think what is key for us as an energy sector is what is required for that economic development to happen in terms of projects. As a regulator, we have licensed about 40 projects as new independent power producers with a capacity of about 6,786 megawatts, of which 15 are solar with a capacity of 734 megawatts. But where are we in terms of development of these projects? We need investors to come in, bringing in equity, bringing in different, not just equity, but also technical know-how on the implementation of the projects. So there is issues of how do we support these projects to ensure that they are bankable and we get the necessary partners to come in and develop these projects with us. The key issues have been addressed by most of you in terms of what are investors looking for from Zimbabwe. They are looking for consistency in policies. They are looking for economic stability. They are looking for assurance that when they bring in the capital, whether it's coming in as equity, they'll be able to repatriate as dividend or as loan repayments. And that's what they are looking for. So we are looking at almost 12 billion, which is required as investments into the sector for us, not just to meet the demand for industry, but also for all the other sectors of the economy which require financing. And what has happened with energy, just to conclude, is that energy has transitioned over time. There's a lot with renewable energy. What has happened is all of you can be part of the solution. If you are in industry, you can actually put up solar systems on your roof and be able to self-supply. Energy is going through a system where you can be part of the solution. You don't have to wait for a utility. That's why the structure of energy is going to change. And we are moving from a structure of where you have major consumers to prosumers. Prosumers are those who are producing for own consumption and also for sale. So we are looking at a total solution where, as industrialists, stop looking at utilities as the only area where you are going to get your power supply. Look at yourselves in terms of what you can do. And the last thing I would want to talk about is the efficiencies, because the first source of fuel now is energy efficiency. So let's be efficient in terms of how we use energy, and let's manage energy in such a way that with our decreased capacity utilization, because we're at 47% capacity utilization, your energy consumption is high. Let's work on improving and retooling to ensure that we have energy efficient equipment. I'll stop here and then I'll conclude later, Chair.
Thank you, Engineer Magombo. I think then our next panelist is going to be Mr. Frederick Mandizvidza. He's going to talk on ZimDev, what their involvement in infrastructure is. I would ask him if he can to make special reference to the IT infrastructure.
Thank you very much, moderator. I must confess upfront that I might not be able to talk about ICT infrastructure. However, I intend to talk about the role of human capital development with a focus on infrastructure development, which is our role in terms of development of skills that are required by the nation. I want to agree with the presenter that our infrastructure is dilapidated. We are actually between 23 and 30 years behind the developed world. And that means we are competing at the international arena with companies whose technologies are at the front end of technological development. And you are not forgiven because you don't have what it takes to compete at that level. We have infrastructure which was primarily designed to serve in a resource-driven, labor-intensive, and high-cost extractive economic culture. When at international level you're competing with those that are efficiency-driven, those which are driving their manufacturing platforms with low-cost, export-oriented culture, particularly digital systems. We also have got a predominantly analog manufacturing system which remains stuck in the revivalist and retooling mode. We talk quite a lot about reviving our economy, reviving using our outdated technology, are competing with those that are produced by additive manufacturing. And that creates some serious problems. And a major challenge that we are facing is that there is non-existent industrial innovation in our system, which is a coordinated approach to a new product development, new industry development, and even the sourcing out of markets. We are not coordinated. And a major gap exists between industry and institutions of higher learning, wherein institutions of higher learning produce skills for the purpose of certification and because they are demanded by students, and not because they are demanded by industry. And at the end of the day, we do not have the required support through innovation of new technologies that support the dilapidating infrastructure. So when our infrastructure collapses, our industry does not have the backup capacity to revitalize it through innovation, which takes it to the next generation manufacturing systems. And that's a serious problem. Now, as a nation, we have concentrated on development of skills in the medium and lower end. We have not focused on the upper end of skills development. And because of that, we remain behind. If you look at the United States of America, they have now produced their 9th manufacturing innovation institute. We don't have any, not even a single. China is focusing on coming up with 40 innovation institutions by 2025. We don't have any. South Africa is focusing on having 3 inter-D technology centers where they are going to use additive and virtual reality systems. But we don't have anything. And I think these are things that we need to focus on. And where do we need to align ourselves? First and foremost, it's transforming our higher education system so that it becomes STEM-based, and then it focuses on creating a highly strategized innovation system, which is designed to serve the interests and demands of the nation and industry. Have a national research agenda which is defined, so that our institutions of higher learning respond to these demands. At the end of the day, we must be in a position to catch up with Industry 4.0 at the end of the day. We also need to set priorities, set infrastructure, which responds to that through skills development. And I think these are the issues that we need to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mandizhidza. I think you did touch on the bit of the IT issues that I wanted you to touch on. Thank you for that very much. We now go to the CEO of Lafarge. Her name is Amal Tandawi. She's going to give us a bit of a case study, give us what they are doing as Lafarge, and what are some of the things they have done where they in infrastructure, so that as companies we learn a bit more of what we can do.
As Lafarge, the group is transforming internationally. They are moving from just being a material provider to being partners in providing solutions to the customers. This is something that we have taken into Zimbabwe as well. So we really are moving from just being a cement producer and a cement provider to coming up with solutions both to the government and to the private sector. If we look historically, as cement providers, if you look at all the iconic buildings and projects in the country, we have been part of this since the 50s. Since the Kariba Dam, if you look at the roads, if you look at the airports, we have always been there as cement providers. We also introduced new, if I can say, new products like high-strength cement, for example. We were the first to introduce it in 2015. I think most of you can recognize it as the Superset. It retails at the name Superset. But today, what we are trying to work at is, instead of only giving the materials, we want to provide solutions. And two main things I want to tap on that today we are working on. One is the roads. And when I talk about the roads is, we want to provide a solution because we do provide cement in the asphalt roads. And the cement goes, cement and aggregates. And it goes into the soil stabilization, it goes into the base, sub-base of the road. But what we are trying to introduce the specifiers to today is that the whole road is concrete. And the idea behind it is we reduce the imports and we use locally produced material. And today, concrete roads, they have been, that concept has been in operation now for more than 40 years. So they have been able to reach solutions where it's no longer expensive as it used to be, and it's durable. We can talk about a road that can remain there without maintenance for at least 30 years. The second is affordable housing. And again, in affordable housing, we come in as the material provider. But most importantly now, the way we are working with both the private sector, the banking sector, as well as the government, is we go in as project management. We go in as coordinators. We try to bring everyone together on the same table, and we try to work out where the problems are, as little and as trivial as they are. We go in and we coordinate. So this is what now Lafarge is providing in terms of the infrastructure. The impediments that we have on the infrastructure, mostly, is funding. And I repeat it again, funding. And funding, because infrastructure projects, they are very well known to be of very low return. Private sector, as much as they can go into the infrastructure, they cannot take on their burden the infrastructure projects. Because I cannot imagine a road with a high return where private sector can go and get the return in 3 years or 5 years. A dam, a power station. Funding for infrastructure projects has to be done and has to be adopted by governments, has to be adopted by specialized banks, maybe with very low interest rates. But private sector cannot be the solution for the infrastructure issues in any country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have representatives from government here. I think they hear the story and they hear the message. We also have bankers here, including the one next to you, who is involved very much in that. I think he also knows the message, and we hope they will do something about it. Last but not least, we have Mr. Dube. He represents CFOS, which is an umbrella organization for the construction industry. We just wanted him to talk to us about what are the challenges, what are the experiences they are getting, and how can they as locals participate in some of the big infrastructure projects. One of the issues we often face at CZI Infrastructural Committee is how do we get locals to participate in some of the big infrastructure projects? Is it a policy issue? And so we want to hear also from CFOS whether they are having the same issues and what solutions they would want to, they can advise that perhaps we adopt.
Thank you very much, Chair. What I would like to say, to start with, I would like to say, I think since our independence, our population has doubled. and we don't see the same as far as our infrastructure is concerned. As the CIFOS, we are a board which represents construction companies, those that are into building, civil engineering, electrical, and other specialist contractors. There's always been a say, especially from the government, to say, as locals, we don't have capacity. But I would like to challenge the government to say, it has been the norm here in Zimbabwe, whereby we were saying the government would fund most of the infrastructure projects. But we understand the dynamics which are going on in our industry, and we are also sensitizing our members so that they can adopt the current developments which are going on, whereby we are saying there is need for joint ventures, there is need for consortia. We also talk of the triple Ps. Generally, as CIFOS, we are there to give the implementation of all the infrastructure development here in Zimbabwe. And we would like to assure all the private sector players, the government, that we do have capacity as far as implementation is concerned. But the major challenge, I think it has been said by several speakers here, is that of funding. When we talk of infrastructure, we are not talking of something which is light. We are talking of big things. And we say whatever is going to be done in this country, all the industries downstream, we rely on infrastructure development. We are talking of high cost of doing business here in Zimbabwe. Where is it coming from? I will give you an example. Our rail infrastructure is close to down. But how are these manufacturers going to transport their goods? There is need for us to be very innovative, and the government must be there for us so that we can improve the infrastructure here in Zimbabwe. As far as implementation is concerned, we do have capacity here in Zimbabwe. If we go out there, some of the countries here in Africa, they are relying on contractors from Zimbabwe. They are relying on engineers from Zimbabwe. So I think the ball is in our hands so that we are able to make priorities as far as our economy is concerned. Let's make sure that our infrastructure is up and running so that other industries downstream will be able to benefit. I thank you.
My apologies, Mr. Dube, for rushing you, but I think your message came out very clearly. Now we go to the discussions. In the interest of time, I will take three key questions. The first hand was the lady in pink. Oh, did you want and then I don't want to get fired, so we'll have the president coming second. And today I'm a bit lenient with the lady, so we'll have the lady again just behind the gentleman from Lafarge.
Thank you. My name is Chipo Mutasa from Tier 1. My issue with infrastructure is that we seem to have a fragmented silo approach to infrastructure. And I would like to direct this question to Mr. Sakala. I'm sure you've heard that everybody is talking of funding being a major issue. But when we do infrastructure deployments, we are doing it as standalone projects. For example, the housing projects you are talking about that you are doing as IDBZ. I'm not so sure to what extent energy is playing a role in there, telecommunications where I'm coming from. So then you then find organizations are then trying to come in with their own separate infrastructure afterwards. Is there not a way of coming in and collaborate right from the start, where you have all services and all deployment, including the roads and everything, all done at the same time, instead of organizations later on going into duplicate infrastructure? I know in telecoms we are now talking of infrastructure sharing, but I feel that it goes beyond sectors. It's something that really needs a coordinated approach, and there's a lot of wastage of resources because of duplication and standalone initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mutasa. Can we have the president, please, Mr. Jawangwe?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My two questions. I think the first one is related to infrastructure, general infrastructure development, particularly that which is foreign funded. As Mr. Sakala highlighted, infrastructure development can be an engine for economic growth. But for that to happen, you have to have strong linkages to local manufacturers for the inputs that go into that infrastructure. But we have had infrastructure projects that have been funded, some from China, where a lot of the inputs have also come from the country that's provided perhaps the loan. So at the end of the day, the capital all goes out, because if the supply chains are local and the service providers are local, but that money is then injected into the economy. How can we ensure on all the projects that are coming on are going to be done, that we have predominantly local suppliers participating? And then the second one, Engineer Magubo, is the one that relates to what I said in my comments earlier on at the start, where we said we know there are challenges with regards to power generation, but what we've seen is that for us to be competitive, we need to have power at around 5 to 7 cents. The reason we emphasize this is that is it possible then that it can guide the options that we prioritize in terms of generation? Because outside of that, yes, we will have power, but it will not be at the right price for us. One, to value aid our minerals, and I mean to beneficiate our minerals, and to value aid and become a global powerhouse. Like China developed power at 5 cents. So I mean, I think they get power at around 5 cents, if I'm not mistaken. So what that does, it enables them to import raw materials from all over the world and makes them a competitive processor of materials. So the question is, how can we also achieve the same? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jawangwe. And the third question, can you say your name, please?
My name is Precious Murena. I'm from Lafarge, and I'm a human capital professional. And I was particularly intrigued by the presentation by Mr. Mandizhidza. And I just would like to pose a question to him. I wanted to stop at the point that he made that today universities are churning out graduates that cannot be absorbed into industry for one reason or the other. And I've also had these comments made at other business forums where industry is saying universities are not churning out the right students or the right professionals to be absorbed into business. And my question for him is, what sort of interventions are we putting in place to bridge this gap, or to bring these two bodies or these two parties together in order to ensure that this problem does not go into perennity and continue to become a national issue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We start off with the third question, Mr. Mandizhidza. What interventions or what are you doing about the problem that you yourself have actually identified, that universities are not churning out the right graduates?
Thank you very much. The first thing is that universities are in the process of transformation. And the transformation is, which is a key element, is to make sure that they align themselves with the interests and needs of the country. as matters stand, you realize that students are being enrolled in universities simply because they demand particular courses and programs, not because the industry itself requires them. So the transformation is going to make sure that there is that realignment. And secondly, in the context of that transformation, industry is being engaged to make a say, have a direct input into the shaping of curriculum in our institutions of higher learning. And I think that is very key because industry knows what it wants in terms of the skills, the caliber, and in terms of the requirements as we go into the future. So planning should then take place with that consultative approach. And this is what is currently taking place. And the other dimension is that we are running the STEM program to also make sure that we create the critical mass of graduates who are required by industry, particularly for jobs of the future and industries of the future. And then all this will be underpinned by an intensive research and innovation system, which is currently being put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in his answer, he's also throwing the ball back to us and saying, as industry, what interventions are we making? What collaborations are we making with the universities to make sure that we guide them in the formulation of their curriculum so that they produce the graduates that we need? We go back to Ms. Mutasa's question, the fragmented approach in terms of on the projects. What are we doing about it? And perhaps, Mr. Sakala, when you answer that, you might actually also go to the second one, which was asked by our president, that how can we make sure that there are linkages with local industries, especially for the big projects? I think what comes into mind here is now we have got the dualization from Bedbridge to Chirundu. We are told that 40% of that is going to be reserved for locals, but how do we make that happen instead of it just being a policy statement? What would you advise?
Okay, thank you. Let me start with Mrs. Mutasa. Indeed, on the housing projects that we are involved in, because for us, we only focus on and off-site infrastructure, and this involves roads, electricity, water and sewerage, and we should also have ICT, but we have not included that so far for a number of reasons. Now, for the roads, we definitely work with our colleagues, both at the engineering level, at the level of the municipal authorities, but also with the ministry. Electricity, we work very closely with ZETDC. They actually have to approve the designs, etc. Otherwise, you can't implement. The reason why we have not done much in terms of fiber optic links is, one, if it's high density, it might not be the immediate choice in terms of actually providing funding for it at this particular point in time. But I want to come back to your starting observation on fragmented approach. That's one of my sort of key concerns. The most fragmented players in the ICT sector in Zimbabwe is government. You have Tele1, Net1, Telcel, Africom, Zanet, Powertel. All those are government-owned or government-related entities. And quite a few of them are also talking about fiber optic backbones. That's where duplication is. Rather than fighting with Econet on sharing infrastructure, let's rationalize in the public sector first, and then compete with Econet. That is my observation and my approach. Now on CIFOS, capacity. I like going beyond political declaration and to some extent good sentiment. Collectively, yes, there is capacity by local contractors. Unfortunately, a lot tend to want to work alone. We really need to come to a situation where a good number of local contractors come together. If you have not done a 1 kilometer rural road, don't expect to do a 100 kilometer high engineering design road. It just doesn't happen. And we are going to be caught in the Beit Bridge, Harare Churundu Road. We are going to be caught in a lot of political talk with each and every of our own local entrepreneurs or contractors wanting to get a big slice of the 40%, which they don't necessarily have the capacity. Let's be frank about it. It is important that CIFOS works with its local members, help them to come together. Recently, we have had some tenders for projects, housing projects in Kariba, and also NAST in Bulawayo for the university accommodation. When we did the site visit, I think in Bulawayo we had something like 60 participants. When it came to actual submission, there were 15. And that's the kind of reality that you face. You know, it's interesting, Kariba, even though it was built during colonial period, the company that built it was an Italian, it was not a British company. There are certain jobs where you need to look at those who have expertise, irrespective of where they are coming from. And those of us who are into the sector, it takes time to develop that kind of expertise, especially in infrastructure. And let's be frank about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Collaboration and the need to be frank about our real capacities rather than what we just want to do. We end off with Engineer Magombo. How do we get the power, the cost of power down?
Thank you. The issue of cost of power depends on the energy mix. Whilst you can talk about China having 5 cents, you have to go to their energy mix and say what constitutes their power supply. So if you have predominantly hydro, you'll find that your price will be much lower as compared to someone who's using gas, diesel. So that is the major difference. So you find that the cost of power in Zimbabwe is dependent on the type of mix we have. And the mix where we have 50% coming from hydro, and if you look at the end, there's the hydrothermal, which can be gas and also coal. You also look at the age of the infrastructure, the efficiencies of that infrastructure. You have a power station which is of the 1950s, and we are comparing it with the Ansi development which was done a few years ago in China, which is efficient, modern technology. Half of the coal which goes into Bulawayo Power Station comes out as carbon and ash, which is going out. That's the level of efficiency. That's why they need to repower those power stations. So those are the issues which we should be comparing so that we are able to compare like with like. But I would also like to edge the industrialist. So is the edge with the energy mix and also cost of finance. Sorry, because when you are doing new projects like us, we are in a situation where we need to bring in new infrastructure. And new projects by their nature need to be funded, especially if it's infrastructure, through maybe government-to-government funding or multilaterals where the cost of finance is lower. So if that's not happening, then the cost of the project and the cost of the power will be much higher. So those are some of the determinants in terms of what affects the price. But we are looking at driving government to prioritize projects like Kariba Power Station, which is coming up in December. The first phase is coming in. It will contribute towards the reduction of power. And also doing Batoka, which will come in at about 3.6 cents. So that will reduce the cost of power. But those are also prone to droughts. So you have to look at the balance so that you are able to ensure energy security. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I won't go to a second round of questions. And again, in the interest of time, we will finalize the priority areas and then submit them to the Secretariat. Okay. I also suggest those who have got burning questions to any of the panelists, you can approach them. But I will be kind to Amal. She has got a quick question.
Infrastructure projects and power stations, they are known to be expensive. But pricing doesn't necessarily have to match the cost of the investment. You can have a return over a longer period on the investment so that you can provide the basis for properly priced electricity, for example, that fosters other sectors of the economy. And my question is, normally, big institutions like the IMF, for example, or the World Bank, these are the entities that normally we approach to finance infrastructure projects like these, because they provide very low interest rates, and they have the expertise. They team up with some specialized expert providers. Why don't we approach and work with these institutions?
Okay, thank you very much. I will take that as a suggestion rather than a question to Engineer Magombo, because that actually is a question and a challenge to quite a lot of the people around here. That how do we bring down the cost of power, and also the suggestions that she has given, perhaps we can then take them at a different fora. I think for that's, in the interest of time, I will now hand over to the Director of Ceremonies to round up this session.
Dr. Dafana, may I thank you so much for chairing this session. Our time is well spent, so I will invite you, Dr. Dafana, to just give tokens of appreciation to our speaker as well as to our panelists. And whilst that is happening, can I ask Dr. Mtetwa to prepare to come and make a statement? It's not a speech, it's not a presentation, it's just a statement. Courtesy of Tanganda Tea as well as Net1. Thank you very much for that. May I call upon I'll start with you, Madam Ms. Kamau, to just come and get your token of appreciation. May I call upon Engineer Magombo? And may I also call upon Mr. Mandiridza? May I call upon Mr. Dube? And may I call upon Dr. Dafana? Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our speaker, our panelists, and our session chair. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to invite Dr. Mthethwa to come and make a statement. And soon after Dr. Mthethwa, please, a slight change to our program. I'm going to call upon the Minister of Industry and Commerce, who is also who is going to come and say a few words. Dr. Mthethwa.
Thank you. Thank you, Master of Ceremony, for the slot. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I come from National University of Science and Technology. My name is Eli Mthethwa, where I am director of the Technopark. And one of my roles is to connect NUST to industry. What I have got for you here is to advise you of some intellectual properties that are outputs of our research at NUST from different faculties, and these intellectual properties have reached a point where we have obtained provisional patents for them from Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office, which is located in the Ministry of Justice in Harare. My idea of telling you about these research outputs is actually to invite you as industry to partner with us in order to take these intellectual properties to commercialization stage. You stand to make very good money for yourself by partnering with us to commercialize these intellectual properties. They may not just be sold in Zimbabwe alone. They are capable of being sold in the SADC region, in the COMESA region, and so the sky is the limit for yourselves. Now, there is an industrial application for a LED traffic light. An industrial application, an industrial design for a LED traffic light. If you want to partner with us to commercialize this intellectual property, we'll be very grateful and we'll work diligently to realize its commercialization. There is another industrial design application which involves a head motion controlled wheelchair. It's a wheelchair which you will not have to turn with your muscles to change direction. For the way it will respond to the turning of your head. If you want the wheelchair to go left, you just have to look leftwards. You want the wheelchair to turn right, you look right. And we have also obtained a provisional patent application for sugarcane molasses. Sugarcane molasses as a road paving agent for road surfacing, using sugarcane molasses, which we have got, I presume, an abundance of it in Chiredzi and then for leather tanning. Leather tanning to date is based on, we use chromium salts. And these chromium salts, they present major environmental hazards with the liquid effluent. Now, we have got a leather tanning chemical derived from Wackle plant. The Wackle coca plantations in our Eastern Highlands. From that, we are able to derive a tannin chemical which would replace the use of these chromium salts, which happen to be an environmental hazard. And finally, manufacturing of lithium batteries. We have got a lecturer that has tested the technology of manufacturing lithium batteries using a method which is called, he's calling using melt impregnation method. And lithium batteries are actually the material of the future. As you know, in Europe, they are going to be moving away from hydrocarbon-fueled motor vehicles in the coming decades. Actually, Britain said after 2040, they will not allow any hydrocarbon-fueled vehicles on their roads. So it will be an era of electrical vehicles. And the lithium batteries will actually be the state-of-the-art kind of technology. And in Zimbabwe, in Pikita, we have got among the largest reserves of lithium ore in the world. At the moment, this country is exporting lithium ore as an unbeneficiated raw material. And there is a lot of money to be made from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mthethwa. I know I have been putting a lot of pressure for you to leave the podium. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite the Minister to come and talk to us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I shared something with the media, and as soon as I finished, I thought it was unfair for me to speak to the media of something that I didn't speak to you. It was not part of my speech, but the media saw it fit to ask me something, which I then shared with them, and they ran to make it really big news. And then I thought, look, if the delegates hear about it and they say, but he didn't talk about it when he presented his paper. And I thought I should be fair and talk to you about it. It's all to do with funding of industry. When we talk about resuscitating industry, we are talking of funding and other things as well. When we talk about import substitution or export promotion, we also have to talk about funding. When we supported companies through SI 64 of 2016, we were saying we want to give them time to retool and re-equip. But how can they retool and re-equip without funding? When you get SMEs who then graduate to become big boys and big girls, they also need support, and in some cases, support in terms of funding. How do you fund industry? We do have an entity really dedicated to the funding of infrastructure. And we had Mr. Sakala here. We also have AgriBank, dedicated to agriculture. And we don't have an institution dedicated to industry. Now, what we have done is we have presented a paper to Cabinet where we are looking at transforming IDC from the IDC of olden days, where it's more of just holding a number of companies, some of them sick companies. And the idea is for them to be transformed to an organization that assists, that drive industrialization. And what it means is that IDC and whatever form it takes in terms of funding, will now not only provide the funding, but to make sure that those companies that are so assisted are successful. In the past, we have had DMAF and other facilities. You give money and you forget about it. And in the end, those companies continue to die because we haven't assisted them to succeed. We have organizations, business organizations, chartered accountants, we had the SEDEC. We have a number of institutions that can come together to assist that these companies succeed. We have SARS and other organizations which can help in terms of quality and standards, in terms of efficiencies, who can come together through IDC to ensure that those companies that are assisted succeed in the end, and then we'll have done our job, rather than give money and we forget about it. So the point I was making is that Cabinet has approved our paper to transform IDC so that it becomes the driver of industrialization. Also, you will hear some of the announcement very soon from the Reserve Bank governor, because we are working with the central bank to make sure that we now have a dedicated funding for industry. But rather than just funding, we also have a support intervention to make sure that those who get the money in the end also succeed. So that's what I wanted to share with you, which the media got before you got it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bima, for those statements. I think it's always nice to hear it from the horse's mouth rather than through any other channel. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to a Nescafe break downstairs. What I would advise is that we take our tea and then immediately come back and continue with the proceedings so that we can catch up with our time. Please go and enjoy your tea. Thank you.
female. Most of them live in highly populated areas with little to no financial support.
My parents are 16 years ago, then 2 years.
Lafarge Cement Zimbabwe has signed an MOU with the Women's University in Africa to facilitate customized training through an intensive 12-month development program for young girls aged between 18 and 20. 100 influential women in both the corporate and development sectors across Zimbabwe, together with various female entrepreneurs, have pledged to mentor these girls throughout this crucial development phase. The mentors personally prepared and handed over 100 dignity bags to demonstrate their personal commitment to the young ladies.
My dad passed away when I was 3 years old.
As the saying goes, if you educate a girl, you educate a nation. And so, this is the challenge that Lafarge Manresa Zimbabwe has taken on. And so the Shine Simuka Upenyi Empowerment Program was born. A groundbreaking empowerment initiative centered on empowering 100.
Rising, our dream was shining. Look around you, see the memories, every building.
Commissioning of this initiative today is an unassailable proof of the fact that public-private partnerships have the potential to be engines for economic development, not only in housing delivery, but across the socio-economic spectrum, as they help unlock value and forge strategic alliances that are critical for the sustainable economic recovery of our beloved country, Zimbabwe.
I am very excited that Lafarge Cement Zimbabwe has finally managed to launch its own affordable housing initiative after 2 years of hard, relentless work. The first leg of this initiative focuses specifically on affordable housing for the Lafarge employees, which we have branded Imba Yangu, My Home, My Future, to demonstrate that owning one's own home is achievable.
As you know, in Zimbabwe, there is a big backlog of housing. And what we believe as Lafarge is that anyone who can afford to rent a house for $100 to $150 can afford a house of their own.
The environment which we operate in is characterized by very challenging circumstances. We have very high interest rates averaging between 15 to 20% on the dollar. We have high risk of losing money to fraudulent projects, an upfront deposit of 25% to secure any mortgage, high cost of building materials, suppliers requiring upfront payments because of the cash liquidity crunch.
For the first time in the country, the individual home builder is able to access all their needs, materials and services in the construction process under one roof, and all this hassle-free.
We partnered with companies such as Marsh Insurance, Shelter Zimbabwe, RMDJ, our contractors, and also National Building Society, which is the financier for this.
Us and how we impact the society.
In this particular venture, we came in with financing at the range of 9.5% over a period of 25 years, which meant that the installments, on the houses were equivalent, more or less, with the rental payments that the workers are currently, paying out. We believe that this is, a very exciting venture and the start of so many ventures that would like to replicate, around the country.
I'm so excited because I'm going to be a proud homeowner at my age, as young as I am.
As a land developer, our role was to avail land, not only intrinsic land, but with the requisite infrastructure, which includes roads, water, sewer, and circulation works, at very affordable rates. We also then took part in the availing and processing of title deeds. The process normally takes 5 to 10 years, but for this particular project, with the assistance of our local authorities, airport local board, the Minister of Local Government, we managed to obtain title deeds for the affordable housing scheme within a period of 2 years.
We have been trying for the past 20 years to get our own accommodation. Today, I'm a proud owner of my own home. My family is also proud owners of their own home. Indeed, this is a dream come true.
Pamhuri yandinayo ndine vana 9 vandinochengeta. Uye zvinota kuendawo kunopinda mudzimba dzakava tisingazivi kuti tichaitawo marendirod. Ndinotenda Lafarge nechirongwa chayakatiunza.
We are a medium to large scale construction company, and Lafarge has helped us to gain confidence in the market. As you can see, the project has really helped to create employment to the local community. Besides the business spin-off, downstream industries such as manufacturers of concrete blocks, roofing materials, to name but a few, we have on site a total labor force of 181 people.
The dream is victory that we see.
I would like to thank Lafarge Cement Zimbabwe for the opportunity that they gave to us.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. May I see Mr. Mchuchuti or someone from ZBC? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting Mr. Mchuchuti to come and speak to us as per the program. As you may be aware, CZI has created a special partnership with Basically, before I do that, let me just give you a brief background in terms of who we are as ZBC. Indeed, we are a national broadcaster with a mandate to entertain, to educate, and to inform. But of critical importance is the aspect of creating value to our shareholders, and which is the reason why perhaps we are also here to ensure that at least we have a productive kind of interaction in as far as the commercial component is concerned. Essentially, we've got about 5 platforms from which you can benefit as members. Number 1 is the television. And for now, we have certainly some kind of monopoly and support from government on that note. And then we also have Power FM, and we also have Radio Zimbabwe, National FM. We also have SFM, and we also have the digital platform, which you can also ride on going forward. And most of our platforms, as it were, have got wide reach, given that they are backed by quite a number of transmitters across the country, and which are quite numerous as compared to any of the players in the industry. I think of importance as well is the fact that we are also trying to transform
ZBC, we are going through a restructuring so that at the end of the day, we are more agile as an institution, we are more responsive, and we also try to come up with tailor-made solutions to our partners. We are certainly going to use an outside-in approach in terms of how we are going to do our business with our partners, given that some of the key products that we have is the news, and we can definitely ride on the viewership and the listenership that is quite huge in as far as that segment is concerned. We also have dramas, we've got sports, we've got current affairs, we also have personalities, and we also sell content as it were. Now, let me just rush to the component of the opportunities that are open to CZI members. On the 31st of May this year, an important occasion happened where we signed an MOU between ourselves as ZBC and CZI. And this ushered a new dispensation in terms of opportunities and possibilities, where we have presented more like a platform on which the CZI members can profile the value that they are creating in the economy, and how we can also propagate the same theme that is being championed by the Buy Zimbabwe angle. Again, in terms of the package, just to summarize, one critical component of the package that is contained in the MOU is the aspect of the discount or the value addition that we are giving to CZI members. First, there is the 20%, especially to newcomers, that those organizations that are part of the CZI umbrella, under the CZI umbrella, we have not been doing business with us. And secondly, there is also a 50% discount. I thought you were going to clap hands for me. This is phenomenal. This is certainly going to add value to all our members. And out of that, I can see quite a lot of commitment that is generated on the part of members, given that if you are looking at an ad spend of about 120,000, all it distills to is that the cost of ad spend in that regard, given the MOU, is only 60,000. Which is quite, for me, is quite very phenomenal. I think I've gone ahead of technology, so I will not be using technology anyway. Right, then of course, we are also looking at unlocking value on the part of members, and we also talking about relationship building with the corporate world at large, and we are also talking about offering a one-stop shop, given our platforms that I've just spoken about. Right, in conclusion, because I normally wanted to do my things in time. ZBC, I want to assure you that because of the transformation that we've gone through as an institution, certainly is going to be more like a premier media partner to all our CZI members. And we are also indeed pioneers of local content, and we create value to our customers given the package that is in existence. And we are also talking about being a unique partner who is not only going to talk about the red card, as it were, but we basically looking at your budget as our partner. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot afford to miss this kind of opportunity as partners. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to all CZI members, I think that's an incentive, 50% discount for those who are already advertising with CZI, and a 20% discount for those who will be new advertisers. I think that's one more reason to be part of CZI. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to that particular segment. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the next session where we are going to talk about manufacturing diversification and innovation. May I therefore invite the session moderator, as well as the speaker and the panelist for this particular session. Our speaker is going to be introduced by our session chairperson, and our panelists for this particular session are Dr. Zorodzai Maroveke, Mr. Kudakwashe Chigia, thank you very much. This particular session, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be chaired by Mr. Henry Rizo, who is the Vice President of CZI, who's also a CZI National Council member, as well as the MD of Richmond Furnishers. As you can see from this program, there is no speaker per se, but they are all panelists. So I leave this time to Mr. Ruzizo to come and introduce our panelists for this session.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. What I would do, since this is a panel discussion, I will introduce the topic, then I'll introduce the panelists one by one as I ask them to make a contribution. The session is on manufacturing diversification and innovation. Yesterday, during the official opening, Honorable Minister narrated an incident at Chinotimba Stadium. I'm sure those of you who were here yesterday will remember that when he visited the place, he found all the patrons set facing one direction. And the reason was there used to be a TV in the direction that they were facing, but the TV was no longer there, but they continued to face in that direction. Now, we are talking about innovation, we are talking about diversification. And quite often in our own companies, we end up in that state of affairs where we're still doing what we have done, what we are comfortable with, and forgetting that the world is changing. Earlier this morning, I think Lafarge, and also this afternoon, Lafarge Cement described their innovations in terms of varieties of cement that can be used for road paving and for cheaper housing construction. There's a company that is looking at changes in their environment and adapting to that. I'm sure all of us used Nokia phones at some stage in our lives. Very good devices they were. We all have fond memories of them. But by around 2013, Nokia phones were no longer as important in our lives as they used to be. The CEO then of Nokia was asked, "What have you done wrong?" And his response was, "We didn't really do anything wrong." But I think we all know that they missed the boat somehow. It is said that they failed to develop an ecosystem around applications, as did their more successful counterparts, Samsung and the iPhone series of phones. They failed to keep the customer at the center of what they were doing. They stopped providing solutions for their customers. I think Lafarge referred to providing solutions. And I think Nokia was a typical example of a company that stopped providing the solutions. They were not fast and courageous to adopt new technologies and products. They were too satisfied with their success, and they were very successful during their time. and did not make innovation a component in the culture of their organization. We had heated debate earlier this morning about what needs to be done to make businesses competitive. The big question is, are we doing at the business level, what are we doing at the business level to make ourselves competitive? When capacity utilization is reported at 47%, can we be competitive? Are we making the right products? Are we using the right processes? Do we encourage innovation in our own businesses? Now we have a panel, our panelists here today are from diverse sectors, and hopefully they will give us insight into this area of innovation and diversification. We have from Ethiopia, Mr. Abdisas Adugnas. He holds a BA in International Business from the University of Greenwich, a bachelor's degree in economics from Unity University, a diploma in chemistry, and a diploma in statistics from Addis Ababa University. He has over 2 decades of rich experience in advocacy for business owners. He also managed and implemented projects, All Africa Leather Fair projects, CDA, Earlier Project, CFC Earlier Project, etc., which helped improve and enhance the business of the leather industry in Ethiopia. I think we all know that Ethiopia has been very successful in transforming their leather industry. So can you help me welcome Mr. Abdisa Adugna to give us a presentation of what they've done in Ethiopia.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you for having this opportunity. My presentation will be focused on Ethiopian economy. Ethiopian economy is the fastest growing economy and the fastest economy and the biggest economy in the East Africa. We are the 4th greatest economy in Africa. I'm just telling you brief experiences from this fastest growing industry or economy. Therefore, I'm just sharing my experience. I worked in the leather industry for about 2 decades, so that this may be helpful for this industry. I'm very happy to be here. Still challenge. So my presentation will include briefly about Ethiopian growth overview, previous status of Ethiopian leather industry, the proactive government interventions, current status of the laser industry, and finally, conclusion. So when we see the fastest economic growth of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian economy has been continued and showing strong growth over more than a decade. And the real GDP growth rate has been more than 10% for more than a decade, being the real GDP of the country is estimated at USD 72 million in the year 2016. Exports are showing growth, and exports are showing growth, and economic transformation is basically from predominantly agrarian economy and striving to build a strong industrial economy. In accelerating manufacturing growth, the country is implementing an autonomous industrial park program. There is extensive program in developing industrial parks in different areas of the country, and that just bring about strong manufacturing industry. This strategy is basically following the East African development system. So Ethiopia is on the right track this time. The economy has attracted nearly USD 10 billion FDI investments for the last 8 years. This mainly focus on the manufacturing sector. Ethiopia is prioritizing FDI in specific areas such as agro-processing, pharmaceutical, chemicals, textiles, and apparel, laser and laser products. When we see investment inflows during the past 8-9 years, Ethiopia is just showing almost the FDI inflow is basically very much increasing. The basic reason that Ethiopia is becoming FDI destination is that the political and social stability is very good. Economy is the fastest growing in a very fast state. There is excellent climate and fertile soils. There is a strong guarantee and protections. There is abundant and affordable labor that makes the investor competitive. There is a regional hub with access to wide markets. There is improved economic infrastructure. There is a competitive incentive package provided by government. The GDP of the country is just shown here. Still, agriculture services taking the lion's share, and followed by agriculture. And the industry is basically small size. So as just like the sub-Saharan countries, Ethiopia is basically starts from small economy and striving for building the biggest industry. Exports are increasing. For example, export destinations basically are the greater being Europe, 34%. Asia, 37%, and Europe, 34%, Africa, 20%, and Oceania, 7%, America, 7%, and Oceania is the least. There is huge investments in power. Basically, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is about to completion. This would generate about 6,000 megawatts, which is just basically funded by Ethiopian people and the Ethiopian government. You know this brand, Ethiopian Airlines. This is a multi-billionaire airline working all over the world. All over the world, more than 90 destinations. There is a great investment on roads, railways, and big investments is just taking place in the country. Now I'm just coming to the leather industry. I'm just separating in two parts the previous status of the Ethiopian leather industry. And it was just Ethiopian leather industry was before 2008 was a big structural problem and issues, unsolved issues for long. And the sector had been exporting low-value products for long, nearly 70, 80 years. And this actually needed transformation. This has been widely discussed. The private sector, along with the government, has just dealt with it. And then a solution has been extended. Since that time, export destinations were, during that time, very few. There were many problems as just indicated. So these were actually basically the problems the industry faced during before 2008. But government has just put everything possible to change this industry. Government has just put fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, introducing that players in the industry, investors in the industry are just to hardly transform this industry. With the exception of few products, for example, low-value products like semi-processed, leather, all are getting the necessary incentives. The incentives are duty drawback, voucher scheme, bonded factory, and the manufacturing warehouse scheme. Exporters are also allowed to retain deposit in bank account up to 20% of their foreign exchange earnings. This is non-fiscal part of the incentive. And there is Franco Valuta for exporters. Export credit guarantee scheme is already in place. So the industry is enjoying all these incentives. Another thing for diversification or innovation of the industry institution, the government instituted Industry Development Institute, which is shortly known as LIDI. Instituting this institution, it has helped for the observation, improvement and the diffusion of technologies in the laser and the laser industries product, and enhanced competitiveness of the laser industry by undertaking benchmarking studies and by introducing global excellence standards to domestic production. And the other thing is that market research, so that enables the laser industry for innovation and diversification. Sorry. When we see the current status of the laser industry, several things have happened. The first thing was value addition. The laser industry was just tied up with producing and exporting low-value products like pickle, wet glue. And then when government has just put regulations, industries are forced or engaged to upgrade their facilities. For the upgradation of innovative technologies, government has put the necessary fund for this purpose. And the other thing is, benchmarking activities has been done. The benchmarking activity was done by way of taking Indian experience. The benchmarking activities took us some 4 years working with Indian technologists, and this is what just changed the laser industry to a certain status. So the other thing is the tuning arrangements has been done with 2 Indian institutes called the CLRI, Council of Laser Research Institute of India, based in Chennai, and the other is FDDI, Footwear Design Development Institute in India, Noida. This was the great achievements done with our partners Indian partners to change and transform the Ethiopian laser industry. So inflow of FDI has been increased. In the laser industry alone, there are FDI companies from 9 countries: China, India, Turkey, UK, Germany, Sudan, Taiwan, and so on and so forth, Canada. Still, there are conducive situations that attract to the laser industry. There are big investments like the Fujian, the laser cities. Laser cities are being developed this time. Shoe cities are being developed this time by both by local, by government, and FDI companies. The other thing is that government has just put every possible actions for the transformation, starting from raw hides and skins, the basic raw material of the industry. When we see here, we have 3 species. We have the greatest, the biggest livestock in Africa. We are first from African, and we are 10th in basically 6 in regards with cattle. With sheep population, we are 8th in the world, and with regard to goat population. We are ninth. So these are the base of the leather industry. As just now clearly see, the structure of the industry is completely changed now. The only tanning industry that produces low-value products was just now changed to the other industries. Footwear sub-industry is created. Gloves sub-industry is created. Leather garment goods sub-industries these are the new structure of the Ethiopian leather industry. So products are diversified. For example, the tanning industry produces pickle, wet blue, crust, all types of finished leather. Government has discouraged the export of pickle and wet blue and crust. This time, the leather industry is producing and exporting finished leather, shoe upper, all types of complete shoe production, fashion gloves, sport gloves, industrial gloves, and other leather garments and leather articles. The industry is very much diversified. Export of shoes reached 40 million in 2016-17. Our major markets are USA and China. And for shoe export. Export of leather gloves is currently above USD 6 million, from 0 to 6 million. Export of leather articles maybe small, USD 3 million, which we had no export in leather goods before 3-4 years back. So the contribution of the leather industry to the manufacturing industry is minimal, of course. And as just stated earlier, the real GDP USD 72 million in the year 2000. So the contribution of the leather industry is basically seem small, but the way we traveled, the way we came, is really very, very strong. So we are currently branding our leather, basically leather from sheepskin. Ethiopian leather is unique, highly demanded in global market. Therefore, we are just branding it to having our intellectual property right. So the property right has been registered in Ethiopia, Japan, and we are doing to register it in certain destinations, export destinations. So we are also branding this All African Leather Fair. We annually undertake this fair every year in Addis Ababa, and this is one of Ethiopian leather brand. In conclusion, Ethiopian government has accorded the leather sector one of the priority sectors due to the sector generates foreign currency and the creation of employment. Besides the achievements, the contribution of the leather industry is less than the potential which we are striving for. Great changes are expected in the leather industry in the next 5 years as per the growth and the transformation plan of the country. So we wish CZI a successful 2017 annual Congress. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dugna. I will move straight on to our other panelists. In the interest of time, if I could limit your presentations to 10 minutes, if possible, per person. We have a presentation from Dr. Zorodzai Maroveke from the Hemp Trust. I think it's an innovative company looking at a product that we all not very used to. So I would like to you to help me welcome Dr. Maroveke to give us just a short presentation.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope some of you will wake up, because every time we talk about innovation, it's exciting, it's rejuvenating, and I'm here from the Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust, and most of you are not familiar. This is an infant organization that is currently lobbying for the legal inclusion of a non-narcotic fiber crop that comes from the cannabis family. And I'm sure most of you know marijuana, mbanje, chamba, instagu. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. But we are taking you to a whole nother trajectory that is not smoking the narcotic. So I'm just going to explain the difference between what we do and what you know. So cannabis is a family, like a surname, let's say, a father who's got 2 children. This is the simplest analogy I can give you. 2 children. Tinotenda and Tatenda, they are both sons. But Tinotenda is not Tatenda, and Tatenda is not Tinotenda. So we have what we say industrial hemp. And some of you know Indian hemp. That is marijuana, that is chamba, that's the stuff you smoke. But industrial hemp, scientific name is cannabis sativa, which is not a narcotic. You cannot smoke that because it does not contain the psychoactive compound delta-9 THC. So I know most of you would have been following the news of late, the global trends on medicinal cannabis. We appreciate the value of the medicinal properties of the other one, but that is not what we do. And I'm going to get straight into what and why we are pushing for the legal inclusion of industrial hemp. What you're seeing here are products that I have imported because Zimbabwe is not producing anything. And right here is paper. And I think you all know that right now we have Kadoma paper mills producing only the capacity of 30%. We are importing a lot of bond paper. I think our offices in the government, schools, we all know that we import a lot of bond paper. We are actually trying to work on a case study on how much bond paper Zimbabwe is importing. But what I know is last year, we used $4 million just to import newsprint paper, of which this is something we need to use every day. At the end of the day, is it sustainable wherever you're getting that pulp from? And if I can tell you, 1 acre of hemp makes the same amount of paper as 4 acres of trees. Now, trees take years to grow back, but industrial hemp takes 3 months for you to harvest. Now, think about that. What I also have here is a rope made from banje. I know some of you are still thinking about banje. Leave that one. We have already left it. Just leave that one, okay? Now you can wear it instead of smoking. So this is a rope. As you can see, it's for heavy duty, construction, mining industry, but this is from Europe. And a good friend of mine helped us to do a small pilot project where we imported some fiber yarn from China and we made our own rope in Zimbabwe. This is value added in Zimbabwe. It's very strong. It's actually better quality than the European one because the fiber dust is much less. And the gentleman is somewhere in here who helped us to make this rope. Give him a round of applause. Now, whilst we are at it, there's a food industry that also comes with this fiber crop. And this you're seeing here is made in Germany, packaged in South Africa, sold in Zimbabwe at $14 US for 200 grams. Now, before I found out about this, I had bought 500 grams from China for $3. Until my mother told me, do you know that hemp is being sold in Zimbabwe? And this is something that I had told the Honorable Minister before that, oh, we are a target market of the global players, and they are going to start selling something that we might as well grow ourselves. We have so much underutilized land in Zimbabwe, right? The government is even considering redistribution of land again because of the underutilized land. Again, our economy is agro-based. I do not know if anyone is really thinking about a Plan B cash crop because Zimbabwe depends substantially on tobacco returns or GDP, for foreign currency. And if there is going to be a world tobacco ban, where are we going to be? Is anybody thinking about a Plan B cash crop? And here is something that we are very ignorant about, and some people would have been like, Mbanje, but it might be something we need to consider because we are an agro-based economy. Now we are talking about industrialization, and we know that agriculture supports industry. As you can see down there, I like that Lafarge is here, and I like that they've just mentioned they are now moving from just producing a product, but also looking into, and that is diversification that we are talking about. As you can see down here, I have 2 bricks made from this crop. I know it sounds bizarre, but I was going to demonstrate how it actually is, we move from just a crop to a brick. The one down there is from Europe, okay? That is water, lime, and the woody part, the inner core of the stalk. The carbon footprint is really, really low. We are talking about environmental issues now. This brick you're seeing here, the one on the top is from Malawi, okay? This brick is soundproof, fire resistant, mold resistant. It has thermal inertia, so in winter it warms the house. In summer it cools down the house, and there's air circulation, so you might not even need windows. So think about that. Just think about it for a moment. This is the future. Eco-friendly homes. Zimbabwe is, maybe we would say Zimbabwe is far from that, but we have companies like Lafarge who are now looking at sustainable solutions. We know about sand poaching, about the traditional brick we are using in Zimbabwe. There is serious sand poaching that is happening. That is an environmental issue. For you to make that brick, you have to cut down trees to burn it and dry it. That is, again, an issue. So this could be something we need to consider because Zimbabwe does not live in isolation. The globe is moving in that direction of sustainability and eco-friendly homes, and you're not thinking about that. So I'll leave that for you to think. I like that he mentioned something about textiles or something like that. And I have 3 different, okay, I can show you. 3 different pieces of clothing made from hemp. I bought these in China again. So this is the oil, edible, high protein. For those who don't eat fish, you get your omega-33 acids, omega-6 from this. And it's very good for women who are, at the menopause stage because it helps you to stabilize hormones. Now, with all this goodness and with all this, so why don't we have it in Zimbabwe? This is why. And by the way, this is where you get your highest protein. You can eat eggs, milk, all kinds of meat. You can never beat the protein 100-gram serving of this. Actually, the nutritional value is at the back of this to prove what I'm saying is 31.5 grams of protein per 100-gram serving. You're not going to get that from the meat you eat, from the milk you drink, from the eggs. And we have a high protein deficiency in Africa. It's a real issue. And it's part of our Zim asset cluster, food, nutrition, and what. Yeah? The clusters. And of course, value addition and beneficiation. You do not throw away anything from the seed alone. I think we were discussing this issue earlier on about the importation of soybean seed cake, the oil, the cake. It's about 3 million, average 3 million per month we are importing that. But you could get that from hemp. The cake, you directly feed it for livestock feed, and you can further process it into a high-protein flour for human consumption. And you can also make beer. The oil that comes from it, edible, the crude oil, I'm sorry, just one more. Yeah, the crude oil, then you can use it for technical lubricants and medicinal, if you want to make pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. So this is something that we are pushing, and we are hoping we'll get support from stakeholders, because most of you are in businesses that could be affected by the introduction of this. But we are saying, take part, and so that you can diversify and embrace the innovation which comes from young people. And we are looking forward to your support as an organization. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk too much about Mbanje. My name is Kodachigi, I'm from Pro Plastics. For the products that we make, we're actually presenting in the showroom out there. You are free to go and interact on those products. I'm actually just going to make some salient comments from the presentations that were done earlier on in the afternoon, and also the current presentations that has been done concurrently now. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the gentleman that came all the way from Kenya to discuss with us about the leather performance and the leather industry in Kenya. Ethiopia, apologies about that. Okay. I think there are a couple of salient comments that I want to make that can actually take our industry in Zimbabwe going forward successfully and profitably. The first element that I've made from the presentations that we've done earlier on is actually the intellectual capital or the human capital element that we need to look at efficiently as we consider our processes. This is the cornerstone of the success of our businesses. This is the cornerstone of the successes of our service industry going forward. If we don't look properly at this feature, I don't think really we'll take the performance of our industry and the economy at large to the levels that we want. Then the second salient feature that I want to discuss about is actually on equipment performance. Very key. When we say we want to retool, when we talk about the SI64, and we have been given the opportunity to retool, we have not been given this opportunity to go and buy second-hand equipment that will last us a year, to go and buy second-hand equipment that will require a huge capital outlay in procuring spare parts. This is an opportunity as industry to go and ensure that we buy the latest technology that can take our economy and industry to the right levels against all the other world-class players. Then the third element that I have here is operational performance. Obviously, operational performance is linked to the equipment that we buy as a country, as industry, and it also linked to the intellectual capacity that we invest in running this equipment. You can buy the latest technology, but if you come and you don't have proper and efficient people that run it, it's as good as we have done nothing. The fourth feature is actually sound research and development. This is an element most of our business are not paying particular attention, but this is where we really need to derive our core efficiencies. Research and development doesn't just happen to product offering. It also happens in service offering and also technology advancement. Then the fifth feature that I want to highlight is actually the external environment. I would actually want, I know they will thank you, Minister, I would actually want to thank you personally from a Pro Plastics and industry perspective point of view, that the support that you're giving us, it's quite encouraging. It is our anticipation and hope. It is our anticipation and hope if all ministers that are in government and the government itself can work together towards the initiatives that the industry, the Minister of Industry is taking. I think the dynamics and complexion of this economy will change in less than a year. The government just need to work together and they just need to support us. All the industry captains that are here, Minister, is that they are bruised and battered. We don't sleep at night. We are survivors. And what is affecting us to take our business going forward is the external environment. Not external out of Zimbabwe, but external within our industry. The economic, political, social, all those retooling, refunding, like actually commented on the IDC now. It's actually a good initiative going forward. And we hope it's not just going to go on the shelf like any other initiatives that we've come up in the past. Then lastly, I want to talk about innovation and diversification. I know the topic that we have is saying diversification and innovation. I don't know what comes first. But in my opinion, I think you need to innovate and know exactly how we can improve and become ingenious so that you can diversify and make proper decisions and keep our business profitable. Simply put, innovation distinguishes between leaders and followers, I think we need to be leaders in this country. Then when it comes to diversification, the elements that are playing at par is half the time when we try and diversify and things are not working, we get stuck in those situations without actually making quick decision to say this is not working, let's abandon it, and let's find other mechanisms that can take our initiatives going forward. I think those are the comments that I have, Chairman, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chigia. I think from our presenters, we heard how Ethiopia, from previously just exporting semi-processed leather, they have gone into the shoes, into gloves, into specialized sheep leather, and they are doing very well at it. The description of where they are, how they were in 2007-8, is exactly where we are right now. With some players in our industry clamoring for exporting raw hides and others wanting to export wet blues, and very little processing going on. But from 2008 to now, they have moved from an insignificant player in the leather industry to a significant player. And I think it shows what can happen when there's innovation. We heard about industrial hemp, very, very interesting. I certainly hope we will support the initiatives to introduce this crop into the country. The range of products that can be made from it are amazing. And I think we need to support innovation that will help the country. Pro Plastics is one of the enduring brands in the country. They've been there for a very long time. And I think we heard from Mr. Chigia what they are doing to remain relevant. So at this point, I would like to invite just a few questions. We, unfortunately, are almost out of time. It's 5 o'clock already. So I'll invite, questions, maybe just one round of questions. Then we'll get a response from our panelists. There's a question over there, Kuda.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Chanakira, and I found the presentation on industrial hemp very interesting. I read in the South African Sunday Times that's last Sunday that there's a lady who used cannabis oil to cure cancer. It was a very interesting article, and it was saying that she used about $10,000 to cure her breast cancer, and it is completely healed. I just wanted to ask the lady who made the presentation whether we can get this kind of oil from industrial hemp, or it's not possible. Thank you.
Hello?
Thank you. Another question? There's one over here.
Thanks. Mine is not so much a question as to a comment on the Ethiopian presentation. I think some of the unstated issues are people behavior and discipline. I recall about 4 years ago being in a seminar where there's a Chinese lady who is an MD of one of the companies in Addis Ababa. And one of the issues she shared with us was at one point it took more time to move some of the materials from Djibouti port to Addis Ababa than it took from Shanghai to Djibouti. And when they observed that, they were able to reach the civil service and, more importantly, the political leadership at the highest level, and action was taken, and it changed.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, this is A.K. God. I am from a medium-scale industry from India, Ingos International. Okay. I have the privilege of working with some of the Ethiopian company in close tandem. So the one thing, what more or less we have discussed here is at micro-level economics, which is the job of the federal or the state government, give the policies. But our experience in India as well as in Ethiopia is 60% of the industrial growth come through small and medium sector. Even Ethiopia, if you see the exports, the gentleman will endorse me, majority of the export is going from small and medium sector. There the concept of process and method improvement is of utmost important. As you rightly mentioned, this new machinery, new technology and all that thing coming up. So I want CZI, what step you are taking to encourage small enterprises and also to make those more profitable, innovative by way of process and method improvement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think the President had a question. Mr. Javangwede.
Right. Thank you. My question, I think, thank you very much for the presentation. It's certainly showing that some of the where you've come from is also an area where we are at. Now, my question is, how did you get around, because we do have value chains, and we do have value chain studies, we've got value chain strategies that have been put on paper. But the challenge that we are facing, I'll speak about two, particularly in the cotton to clothing and the leather to footwear value chain is exactly as VP has been talking about. We are having challenges of conflicts among value chain players, where the clothing manufacturers would like to import fabric, and the textilers are then left with there's general conflict there. That's a current problem. Then you have on the leather, exactly as the VP was stating it, the hide collectors would like to export and get their cash there and then. Then you have the tanneries not having access to rights. Then you have the footwear manufacturers now importing leather. So I've seen you've heard what is called leather. So does it, how useful is an overarching institute, one, and two, how do you balance the needs of these value chain players? Because what the whole chain is because initially you cannot process as many hides as you're producing, but then as the capacity goes up, there's a need to rebalance. So I just wanted maybe if you can help us on how you moved around that. Thank you.
All right. I think at this point, perhaps we need to just get responses to these questions. Otherwise, we get overwhelmed and we may not be able to respond. I will attempt to answer the one on what CZI is doing to encourage improvement at enterprise level. I think this morning I referred to a lean manufacturing initiative that CZI is championing, where we are training organizations together with the Lean Institute Africa on the principles of lean management, which helps at shop floor level to get efficiencies in manufacturing. That's one initiative that we have been taking at CZI. I'm sure we can do much more, and I imagine it's a challenge to us to see what else we can do to improve enterprise at enterprise level. The other questions, I think, there was a question on industrial hemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chanakira, for a very pertinent question. By the way, this industrial hemp has high concentration of what we call CBD. That is a non-psychoactive compound. This marijuana is in high concentration of the THC, which is the psychoactive compound. So for some cancers, it's important to mix for the effect, to be satisfactory. But for some cancers like stage 1, stage 2, and other diseases, you just need CBD. So I hope that answers your question, that yes, we can get medicinal properties from industrial hemp. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I think whilst you're there, ProPlastics, there was a comment on technology. I suppose in your presentation you answered that, unless you want to add something else?
Not at this stage, thank you.
All right. We'll then hand over to our presenter from Ethiopia. A few questions asked there.
Thank you. With regard to challenges related to from port to production areas is, of course, this has been a great problem. But now that challenge is solved. As you well know, the Djibouti Addis Ababa railway is already completed. Exporters and importers were suffering that the goods, moving the goods, almost taking on the average 3 days from from Addis Ababa to Djibouti. This was one of the problems faced by most exporters and importers. Now the problem has been solved. The railway, modern railway, electrical railway is already built now. It will be operational as of September. Everything is completed, but there are some arrangements to just inaugurate. So this is one of the achievements of investments in infrastructure. So Ethiopia government is big achieving that part. With regard to value chain, currently this problem exists. The problem among value chain, for example, raw material, raw hides and the skins, supply for tanneries, finished laser supply for the footwear industry, for the laser glass industry and other laser goods. This is observable challenges we are currently seeing. The thing is that tanners may prefer exporting finished leather than selling domestically, than selling to the footwear companies or other companies. So what happened is that in Ethiopia, most shoe companies are vertically integrated this time. Shoe companies may have their own tannery, or they may have their own partner in the tanning industry. By way of this, challenges are minimized. It doesn't mean that the challenge is solved. Now, looking at this situation, because we have the largest resource, raw hides in this case, but there are a number of factories are from time to time increasing. So government is now taking action for import of raw hides and the skins without duty tax. And the finished leather as well is imported from other countries. So if shoe company need to have more finished leather, can import from Brazil, can import from other countries. So this is the kind of action taken. So importing is very much encouraged without tax. But the thing is, every time export is given priority. With regard to raw hides and the skins, we have the government has introduced raw hides and the skins marketing system. There is a big change. The chain was very much long, from primary producer to the tannery. The chain has been cut somewhere. The regulation, government regulation has cut those people involved, unnecessarily involved, such as agents, other agents, who are not adding value. So by this way, the raw hires and the skin sector is currently very much favorable for supplying to the tanning industry. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a lot of interest, so we'll take one more quick round of questions. Mr. Msipa over there.
Just a very straightforward questions. I just wanted to ask Mr. Abdisa Adugna, you mentioned that at the beginning in 2008, the exports, Ethiopian leather exports